podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people from around the world, they know where British Columbia is and where Canada is, but where is Prince George? Well, Prince George in British Columbia is in the center of British Columbia, about 500 miles or 800 kilometers for our European friends, north of Vancouver. A beautiful, beautiful country, lots of wildlife. And if you ever visit Canada, and you should, then visit northern British Columbia. It is a beautiful, beautiful place. Today, we have a very special guest, Maggie Perotin, and she is a entrepreneur extraordinary, has an MBA from Jack Welch Management, and also is a coach of entrepreneurship, and also won marketing branding for service solopreneurs. What are solopreneurs, Maggie?
Solopreneurs are business owners who run their business on their own. So that's one of my clients I help. So they're the marketing department, the service delivery department, the everything. And I also help small businesses with employees as well. But yeah, solopreneurs are one person show.
Yeah, so I started like that as well, and many other ones do, where you have to be a jack of all trades, or you have to have all the skill sets, that are required. Is one of the challenges getting it off the ground. And so the services that you provide, especially in that specialty, is then solo entrepreneurs. And is it mainly in a particular region, or do you do it on a North American or global basis?
I do global. Most of my clients are in North America, but I would say global, as long as I can communicate in English with my clients.
Yeah, obviously.
Because
Not,
ultimately, sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was just saying, ultimately, what I help my clients with is very often what they lack. So they start their businesses because they're, skilled in the area where they help their clients, whether it's photography or contracting, like, mechanical trade skills or whatever. And then very often they don't have business background, and it takes a business person to run a business. So I come in and help them develop those skills and help them grow the business in a way that doesn't make them overwhelmed and overworked and so on. So that's
the advantage that you have, obviously, is you have an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration from Jack Welch. And then the other part that I found interesting in your bio is I was born in Holland, and you were born, I believe, in Poland.
Yes, I was. Yes.
Where? Warsaw?
And no, in southwest, so close to Wrocław, Breslau.
Okay.
So in like Silesia, which used to be Germany before war, and then after war, when the when the borders changed, a lot of Polish people that lived in the current Ukraine and above, my grandparents, they were moved to the area that used to be Germany, like Wrocław and Opole. So that's where my grandparents were relocated, both of them. And that's where my parents were born, and I come from there.
So when did they go to Canada, and then how did that all go?
They didn't. I'm the first generation immigrant. So my parents are still in Poland. My grandparents passed, but they were in Poland. I was the one immigrating, and I came to Canada in 2015. So almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, so time goes quick, doesn't it?
It does.
I was born in Holland in 1940, so I'm going to be 84 this year. And, and I came on my own as well. We were liberated by the Canadian Army, April the 12th, 1945. It made such an impression on me that I always knew I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada, right from the time I was 5 years old, so. And I love it. I love Canada. So obviously you're very familiar with Europe, in particular now the challenges in the Ukraine and with
Mhm.
Putin and Russia. And then I'm very familiar with it in the sense that, and I say that a lot of times during my podcast to a lot of people that, with all due respect, may not fully realize that I was born at a time that had a dictatorship that decided to overrun Holland in May of 1945, and Hitler did,
Mhm.
and it changed everything. All the
Mhm.
things that we took for granted up to
Yeah.
that point. My parents were relatively newly married in 1938. They
Mhm.
had first a son and then fairly quickly a daughter. And then when the war
Mhm.
started, just before the war started, my mother was pregnant with me, and I was born November the 1st, 1940. That
Mhm.
all the things that they dreamed about, and that the jobs and the family they had, and they were
Mhm.
in love,
Mhm.
and then everything changed
Mhm.
overnight. My
Mhm.
dad was drafted into the Dutch army. The last they heard from him, when he was last time that they heard that somebody saw him, was in Rotterdam before it was bombed and thousands of people died. And then for 5 years they wouldn't know if he was survived or died.
Mhm.
Everything changed. And to
Mhm.
all the people, with all due respect, North America in particular, that don't like democratic governments, may it be in the United States or in Canada, then I say to them, I know because I lived there. I
Mhm.
know I had the scars from it, PTSD, and it affected our
Mhm.
family and the rest of
Mhm.
our lives. Is that living under a dictatorship is not
Mhm.
a good option, as you well know, and as people in the Ukraine well know, and then all the struggles in the Middle East. There are a
Mhm.
lot of issues, and then
Mhm.
every time when I fly around here, in particular in Canada, I usually in commercial flights, I have a lot of business, do a lot of business in North America actually, and I fly a lot commercially. And I usually sit by the window and I look outside and say, it's paradise. It is paradise. It
Mhm.
simply does not get any better. Now, the danger in that part of Europe is Poland, obviously, is right up against the Ukraine. It has
Mhm.
been very supportive of, the Ukraine in their
Mhm.
fight in the
Mhm.
invasion of Russia.
Yeah.
Are they that is fear still? Correct me if
Yeah.
I'm wrong.
Yeah.
That Putin
Yeah.
will push as far
Yeah.
as he can, and
Yeah.
if they get control over Poland, then what will follow West Germany, Hungary, and on and on and on and on,
Yeah.
and the other smaller countries and alongside the
Yeah.
west side of Russia as well.
Yeah. Well, like Polish people, I don't want to generalize, but in general, we've never trusted Russia, and it comes really from history, right? Where first of all, before the World War I, Poland didn't exist on the map of Europe for over 100 years because it was invaded and divided between Austria, Russia, and Prussia. But then not everybody knows that part of the Second World War that actually started in 1939 in Poland, where it
Yeah,
was invaded from one end in Germany and the other end from Russia, who was supposed to be our ally. And they
yeah,
waited
supposed
and
to
they
be.
didn't, right? And they invaded and then took, and that led to the communist regime and so on. So we really never trusted them. And I
No.
agree with you. Like, I think being living in a democratic country is the best blessing we can have, as much as we don't like it and sometimes people complain about it. I was born under communist regime, and I'm probably the last generation that still remembers it enough. I was 11 when it collapsed, and I can tell you communist regime or any extremist regime, it just doesn't work. And it can
No,
have all the ideals in the world, but it doesn't work. And the
no,
best we have is democracy. And we need to
exactly.
cherish that and take care of it.
Exactly.
So,
And like you, I lived there under, a dictatorship called Adolf Hitler. And and a lot of people think that, okay, there is a war, and when the war is over, everything goes back to normal. No, it doesn't. It can take generations before things settle down. I know in my family, it affected the entire family. My dad came back after the war, but he was never the same. He had,
yeah.
I always remember he came home with a helmet that he had. He fought underground with a bullet right through it, and it nearly killed him. It was
Mhm.
only a very slight distance away from his
Yeah.
brain, and but he never recovered from it, and the relationship really didn't
Yeah.
either.
Yeah. Yeah. Like even one of my grandfathers from my mom's side, he was a teenager, but I guess at the end of the war, he was somehow involved, and also he even escaped. So, like his father and him, they were captured by Russians and were trying to get them out. And I don't know the English word, but get them out to Siberia. And they escaped the transport. They were the last truck, and they got out of the truck and so on. But he definitely all his life had some sort of PTSD when he had nightmares all his
Yeah,
life, right? And
yeah,
there was things he didn't want to necessarily talk about to us, but yeah, like that affects families for generations.
yeah. Even for myself, even at a 5-year-old, saw far too much that we should not have seen. Affected me in
Hmm.
terms of
Oh yeah,
PTSD,
for
and the
sure.
inner child actually had counseling for that, even when I was already in my 50s. Very emotional, but
Yeah, yeah,
then I look at the United States and see the elections there that saying, I don't know about that. But and then I look at Canada, we
mhm,
are boring by comparison, and and I like it that way actually, because the premier or the prime minister here, could be out in the next election, and so there
mhm,
is no danger of dictatorships really, and so it's more than anything compared to the other ones boring. And then
mhm.
Canada is such a beautiful, beautiful country. Did you come
Yeah.
directly to Toronto or?
Yeah. Yeah, I came directly to like Greater Toronto area. That was so I when I immigrated, the way I found out about Canadian immigration system was through a friend. We were doing a postgraduate translation school, English, Polish, Polish, English. And at that time, so I was already working. I finished my first master's degree. And at that time, Poland was a few years away from joining European Union, but there was a very high unemployment. The I had to work because I was in a big city, actually Poznan, which is close to Berlin.
Yeah,
So I had jobs, but I wasn't making a lot of money. And when you're young, you're like, oh, I want to travel and I want to have a house, and you have all those dreams, and you're looking, it's like it's not going to be easy making $300 a month.
yeah,
So my friend told me, oh, Canada has this immigration program, a skilled immigrant. I already spoke English and I'm fluent in French as well. You should try. So at that time, I was married to a Polish guy. It was my first husband. And we started talking about it. And he has family here. So two of his aunts were here in Greater Toronto area, immigrated back in the 80s. We talked to them and they were like, you know what, if you come, we will welcome more family. We'll help you out. And so I applied as a principal applicant just because of my skill sets. And then, yeah, we got a permanent residency and we're young and we're like, we have nothing to lose, right? You
no,
can try.
exactly.
And off we went. And one of the best decisions in my life, just like you, I love it here. So,
Yeah. And so when then did you start your career in this particular field that you're into now?
so the business coaching in my own business, I started actually not that long ago, about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And it came from a corporate career that I had that I started. very quickly after I immigrated. So when we came here, I started looking for work, and the uncle of my ex-husband was working for a facility management company. So facility management is the industry, at least for the companies I used to work for, are companies that manage all kinds of properties and space for larger institutions. So financial institutions, the government, telcos. So any company that has a lot of facilities out there and they want to get rid of the headache because it's a cost center for them. I used to work in an industry that just did everything. So my very first work, because I was bilingual and because when you serve the federally regulated institutions like banks and financials, everything needs to happen bilingual. I got a job in a call center that takes calls from like occupants of the buildings reporting issues. So, for example, my toilet is broken. There was a flood in the basement. A car drove into a bank branch and damaged a lot of things, and so on. So, you would take those calls, you would troubleshoot them, and then send a contractor, a vendor to, fix things, right? So that was my very first job, and I stumbled upon that industry that I found really interesting. It was always something going on and not boring, and I grew my corporate career there for 15 years. So I become from like very, a call center agent to like a more senior leader, and that's how I grew and sort of discovered passion for coaching and grew my business experience. And 5 years ago, I started the business.
So obviously, when you had taking calls and managing clients,
Yeah.
meaning leasees, the people that lease the apartments, then you being bilingual was a big advantage. Now,
Yes,
do
it
you
was.
speak other languages? Like, I presume you have a good working knowledge of German because of your family connection? Not really?
Not much. Like I can understand. My sister is very fluent. My dad is fluent in German, but
Right.
no, I speak Polish, French, and English fluently.
Yeah.
I can understand a bit of German. I can say a few words. Same with Russian. So I used to, because I was born under communist regime, I was mandated to learn Russian in primary school. So I took it for about 3, 4 years.
Yeah.
Spoken Russian is similar to Polish, kind of like French and Italian,
Is it?
not
Yeah.
written,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
spoken. So
Right.
there is a little bit that's left from those years, but not
How
much.
about Ukrainian?
Yeah, I don't speak Ukrainian, but it's definitely closer to
Yeah.
Polish in spoken than Russian. So I guess as nations we can understand each other if we know a little bit, but I can't say I can't speak Ukrainian.
It's probably the same as me in Holland. I was born in the northeastern part of Holland, within 10 or 15 minutes from the border. And
Mhm,
that if I speak dialect of the region where I was born in, then
mhm,
across the border, that they speaking the same dialect,
mhm.
although it's German. So
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
is simply because over time there was so much interaction
Mhm.
between all the different borders and all the bigger regions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's yeah. We can understand each other a bit, like with Ukrainians or even
Right.
Czech and Slovakian people, but there are differences.
So the other thing, I'm kind of looking at your bio, high performance lifestyle. What
Yes.
does that mean?
So what that means for me, and maybe my interpretation or my definition of that is different than other people define that. But what I think when you're high performing, or you're sort of thinking, feeling, and operating at your best. And that doesn't mean that you're always happy or that you're always, on things, but like on, positive and so on. But it means is when you take care of yourself, your mind, body, and soul, but also have some good habits in your life and learn how to utilize your time effectively and all those things, you start operating at the higher and higher level. So sort of like think about like a pro athlete, right? When they grow in their skill set, like a pro basketball player, their worst day in basketball will be way better than my best just
Yeah.
because I'm not a pro, right? So that's what I think about high performance, that if we take care of ourselves in our mind and body and soul, and we do that on a regular basis, and we have certain habits that help us, we'll start operating at higher and higher level even on our worst days. So that's how
Right.
I sort of define high performance for human being. And then when you have a business, you can have also high performing business when you have people, processes, and systems working together well, like a well-oiled machine, and supporting each other rather than fighting against each other. Your business will produce way better results as well.
Right. So it's something like for me, when I came into Prince George, BC in
Mhm.
1965, August of 1965, late July actually, and I came off the bus here, I had counted my money at least three times. I wanted to build a sawmill. That was my dream. And I couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. I
Mhm.
had $25.47.
Mhm.
And then, but I counted at least three times. What it says underneath, what I had plenty of is attitude. I
Mhm.
avoid, always have the negative.
Mhm.
I have a passion. Whatever
Mhm.
I like, I give it 120%.
Mhm.
And then work ethic, I work harder than anybody. I always make my bed. I always get up around 5:30 in the morning. I always think I'm late. And so that is the kind of lifestyle. And I'm usually fairly consistent with every day to me is a good day. And
Mhm.
then, I try to stay positive, and I always have done that even when I was young.
Yeah. 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 And that's the thing, right? Because when you are positive and you look, then you see opportunities even in places where sometimes in hardships, right? And I don't think we can avoid it. Life is life. Everybody will have some sort of hardships in their life, some maybe more than others, but like we will have it, right? And it's all about sort of how you look at it, and how, what you take out of it, what you make out of it. And yes, we sometimes need help from others, and it's good to have people supporting you. But we definitely can create majority of the outcomes we get in life just by how we approach life, what do we think, how we think about it, and yeah,
So
what
when
we
I
do it.
first started as a lumber pilot or cleanout man, then a lumber pilot, starting right from the bottom, the key for
Mhm.
me became how do we get noticed by management and saying, this guy, you want to keep him on the picture because he always
Mhm.
comes early, he makes sure all the things are
Mhm.
done right. And so in order to climb up the ladder, I had to be noticed.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So how do you stand out in the crowd?
How do you stand out on the crowd? So as you say, definitely work ethic, passion. I think passion, when you're passionate about something, you will want to do good, right? You will want to be best, as like the best possible because you're passionate about it, right? If you're
Right,
not, you're dragging your feet trying to do something. So that's like
right,
following your passion. And I also always try to do that. Like if I got into something that I realized like this is not me, I can be the best, I'm not passionate, I would change that, right? I wouldn't stay, I would change just
right.
because of that. um so passionate, and then also learning like in business, when you have your own business, yes, seeing your uniqueness, seeing how you are different, and figuring out how do I get noticed
Yeah,
even
yeah,
by my clients, right? So if I'm looking for clients and I have a business, how do I communicate that my difference or the way I'm unique is helping them, right?
yeah,
Is providing value to them. So even when you're an employee, right? How do I can show to my boss that I provide value in a way that nobody else can? This is the
right,
same in your business, right? And
right.
being creative with that and figuring it out.
So how do you attract clients? Do you do it on the website, or how do you attract them?
How do I attract them? So I have many ways. I don't rely on one way. I always say, like, you can't just put all your eggs in one basket and just
No.
hope that everything will be great. So there is multiple things that you want to work together. For my business, it's definitely networking. So
Yeah.
meeting people and getting to know people, and then, providing value to them in any way I can. Then another way is definitely, my clients who are happy with my services and they get results, then I get some referrals and so on. And some of it is online. So whether it's through the website or my social media or online presence, I have a podcast as well. So there is some multiple, I guess, avenues I attract clients right
So
now.
the website that you have, that if
Yeah.
somebody says, I like Maggie, I have some things that I want to bounce by her, so gives me
Yeah.
some feedback, how do they get a hold of you?
So through the website, there's a link to my calendar when you can book a free session or a consultation or a conversation with me. So like it's right on the website. The website is stairway2leadership.com. So one word, stairway2leadership.com. Or, you can find me, Maggie.Perotin, on LinkedIn, Instagram, and other social media, and reach out to me that way through Messenger. And then they can get in touch with me like that as well.
Yeah, it's media is so powerful now, right? If I
It
look at
is.
you're sitting on one side of Canada in
I
Toronto.
know.
I'm 3 time zones away from you, several
Yeah.
thousand kilometers, where I'm
Yeah.
sitting on the west side of Canada, and there we are interacting virtual
Hmm.
on television, and it feels like you're sitting here with me
Yeah.
podcasting live.
I know. It's actually, I think about it sometimes even as an immigrant, and it's credible. So my aunt, my godmother, immigrated to France back in, I don't even know when, 70s or 80s. And I remember her sending like written letters or recording a cassette to my grandparents, which was taking weeks and months for them to get there to have some contact with their only daughter. She was the only daughter. Whereas, as he's saying now, I can call up my parents and see them just like I see you. It almost feels like we're together anytime I want, which is incredible.
I remember when I was 12 in Holland, and then
Mm.
my mom's sister, she was very close to, and that had been involved in the underground, were worried about the Russians coming in.
Mhm.
And the first thing they would do is find the underground that fought against the Germans and get rid of them. So they fled Holland and went to the
Mhm.
United States. And I still remember at being only 12 years old, it was devastating to my mom because
Mhm.
she said, I'll never see her again, ever. And
Right.
then it was even for me, when I came here in 1965, we would send telegrams and
Mhm.
saying, hi, I
Mhm.
found a job, I'm getting $2 an hour, I'm all excited about that, and and I'm being a
Yeah.
lumber pilot, and I hope to become promoted to a
Mhm.
green chain pilot, maybe even a foreman, and on and on and
Mhm.
on. So,
Mhm.
and it was by telegram.
Yeah.
Now,
Wow.
obviously, as you already indicated, although my parents are no longer there, but I still have a sister there and another family.
Mhm.
Anytime I want to talk to them, either go on app and do it not in a way virtual on
Yeah.
smartphones, and I can push
Yeah.
the button and there we go.
Exactly.
And it's
Exactly.
only the beginning, even in terms of the social media, like
Mhm.
podcasting, relatively new.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Immensely powerful because I'm podcasting, I'm sure as you do, all around the world.
Yes. Yes. And then that's as you say, like when you think about it, we sometimes take it for granted, but it is incredible where you put a podcast out there and anybody in the world can find it anybody in the world can listen to it. And as you say, it's just in the beginning. I remember, I don't remember where I read that statistic, but like 80% of the technology or the jobs that like even my kids will have are not even invented yet. Like they're
Yeah,
not here. But
yeah.
with the pace of change and the advancement that we have, that's the reality. Like it's
And
kind of crazy.
especially with AI and all the
Mhm.
things relating to
Mhm.
that, everything is going to change.
Oh yeah,
And
100%.
then for a guy like me, nearly 84 years old, I know a lot of my friends that, even the ones that are professionals that come from that generation, don't even do emails.
Wow.
I couldn't imagine that.
Yeah.
I obviously do all the technology,
Mhm.
do the podcasting, do the use of computers, iPhones, smartphones, and I'm actively looking at AI and how
Mhm.
will we be affected by it? Well, the answer is already substantially because
Mhm.
it will change everything. And it's
Mhm.
already, people say now we should put it, we should slow it down or do whatever. Well, the genie is out of the bottle and it cannot be
Mhm.
changed.
Mhm. Agreed. Agreed. You're right. It's like, once we put something out there as human beings, it's very hard to control. Like it takes the life on its own. And even, if you think about, of course there's concerns with AI and I'm not far from being an expert on it, but like you can just imagine the concerns. But like if you think about history or so on, like the law or the regulation, it always lags. It's always slower, right? And, like by the time it catches up, the advancement is again like so much ahead. So,
Yeah, so it's going to be very, very exciting. The other thing's a little bit more personal, and I know that you don't mind because you had it in your
yeah,
bio, is
yeah,
that you are in you when you left Poland, you
yeah,
were married,
yeah.
and then divorced,
Mhm.
and then remarried,
Yeah,
and now you have a blended family. And
yeah,
I know, as you indicated, you're very, very happy and love with your husband and the blended family. What does that
yeah.
really mean for you, the blended family? Because a lot of people are like that now.
Yeah, there are. Like I talking about statistic, I think I've heard 50% of marriages somehow fall apart, if not more, right? And then people remarry, and that creates a blended family. So for me, I've known my stepboys. So I have two stepboys, sons of my husband from first marriage. Now they don't live with us full time. They live very close by with their mom. But I've known them since they were really little, since they were like 3 and 4. So I've known them before we
Perfect.
had our own kids. With my husband, we have two kids, a boy and a
Yeah.
girl. So for me, it's just bonus people who love you in a way. We have a really good relationship with my boys and with my step boys, and then the kids. There is a bigger age difference between them. Like the oldest boy is 18, and then the middle boy is 17, and our kids are 12 and 10. So there is a gap between them, but they still have a
Just,
great relationship.
yeah.
Um, so it just means, yeah, I guess we live longer as human beings. We get to know ourselves better, and sometimes the old like living with one person for the entire life, it doesn't work out always. And I guess for me, so my parents divorced as well. I was 11, and the one thing that I took out of that, or the lesson that taught me, is being with someone for the sake of being with them, but not really being happy, doesn't help anybody. It
No.
definitely doesn't help kids. I remember
No.
my parents fighting and me, you know, suffering through that. Like, in a way, fighting, just having arguments, right? There wasn't any
Yeah. Yeah.
violence in there,
Yeah. Yeah.
but just having
But
arguments,
still, yeah.
but still suffering and being embarrassed if my friends were around and so on. So I remember when my parents actually split and my dad lived very close. He was still present in our lives. it was a relief for me as a child. I
Right.
was like, I still have my mom, I still have my dad, they love me, and I don't have to witness them fighting.
Right.
So the lesson I took is like, it's actually better where parents are happy in whatever way it is. And if it doesn't work out for them to be together, if they give love to their kids and they're happy, then it's easier to give that love. It's better for everybody. So,
And then the important part about it is always that there's nothing more important than the children from them, even if that is from a previous relationship,
yeah.
but then to try to at least have that part and recognize that that's a very, very important to part to the other partner, right?
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Exactly.
Now, the other part that I always find very important, Maggie, is that as we, and that's what I found for myself, when I came from Holland, I didn't speak the language and I didn't really know anybody. And then academically, I had not been overly successful in Holland. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And, so although when I came here with my $25.47, I gradually, fairly quickly, already became successful in what I was doing. And my dream was to build a lumber mill. I did that in several other companies, but still, it kind of bothered me as to was I not successful in Holland, and it took me 32 years that after I came here in 1965, it was in 1997 that I walked into a store here and I picked up a book. I still don't know why.
Mhm.
The book's title was Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Halliwell, and it was about ADHD.
Mhm.
And I wrote in the book in Dutch, now I finally know who I am. And it affected me even then, but it took me all those years. And then it took me another 5 years before I went to our family doctor, was a personal friend, delivered our 2 daughters. And I was then 62 years old. And he said, "Hey, John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." And so we checked out. Yes, I do. And so it affected my self-confidence to a certain extent, which is very,
Mhm.
very important in life,
Mhm.
and especially
Mhm.
if you move forward, either in a career or
Mhm.
in business, to
Mhm.
develop the self-confidence that, and I find that now a lot of times I do a fair amount of presenting to young people in particular, and saying that self-confidence is very, very important. We a lot of times are too preoccupied as to what we look like, what we are wearing, or what other people think about us.
Mhm.
And what I usually say is that every person is unique and special. There is no
Mhm.
one like you in this
Yep.
world other than you. And you are special. And you have to believe that and go
Mhm.
forward on that basis.
Yeah. 100% agreed. And sometimes like I was just really just having conversation about it with my husband the other day, like, whether it's ADHD or other things, like sometimes our systems try to put everybody in one bucket, but like it's impossible, right? We're all different human beings born from different, families and like with some different conditioning. We're not going to fit all the same buckets. But then when the system tries to do that, then people who don't they think that bucket think there's something wrong with them, right? That they are not normal, quote unquote, whatever that means, because I don't really, think there is something like that. And
That
as you
isn't.
say, yeah, whatever. And then, as you say, it affects our self confidence in one way or another, and it doesn't have to. It hurts us, right? where we were, if we were accepted the way we are, and just that self-confidence built and nurtured in kids, how much more we could accomplish, like overall as a humanity, if we all kind of did that.
Yeah. Be
Yeah.
special. And then the
Yeah.
other part about it is that, so ADHD, and I was, for 50 years, I knew I was different, but I didn't know why until I picked up that book, Dr. Halliwell. He wrote it in 1993. He wrote about 18 books, 5 on distraction. He has a doctorate. He is ADHD, and he's dyslexic, and but immensely successful. I bought the book, Driven to Distraction, still have it. I bought it in 1997, and then you are podcast number 265. I had an opportunity to get Dr. Halliwell on my podcast 203, On the Brink 203, and had an interesting dialogue with him. And so initially from his book, I thought the frequency of occurrence of ADHD is about 8%, but the more I looked at Google and the more I started to get information, I kind of felt it probably is more than 20%. So when I mentioned that to Dr. Halliwell, who's a global specialist, he said, no, John, it's more than 25%. I said, that was interesting. The other thing that I thought I suggested to Dr. Halliwell from what I had seen and looking for response from him was that I believe successful entrepreneurs or CEOs, and the operative is successful, likely, in my opinion, I suggested to Dr. Halliwell that 50% of them are ADHD. He said, no, John, probably more than 75%. And I agree with him. So the frequency of occurrence likely much higher than most people thought initially. And so I found it became important for me to speak about it, but also to write a book about it. And I did that. I wrote this one, ADHD Unlocked. And it's written by me as a person that has ADHD. I call it a superpower. And so I have written about 5 books. I have about 10 companies, and then do a lot of podcasting. And a lot of people say to me, how do you do it all? I say, ADHD, that's why. And that's just how, So.
Yeah, and I it's fascinating, like your bio, your story. It's really very inspiring. But we need to think about it. Like 25% of people, 30% of people, like I don't think we should even consider that as abnormal. You know what I mean? Like, and it's good that it's been defined. And as you say, like for people who have it, it's easier for them to like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me, or I know now maybe why I am the way, but like we definitely shouldn't think like, oh, there's something wrong with people with ADHD. No, clearly there isn't.
It's not a disorder.
No, I agree.
Understand it, and it can be an asset, not a liability, but understand it first, and then understand that you have special abilities. Like for me, I was always a good writer, and I was always good with numbers, but I was not very good sitting in school, and all the other stuff was going on. I simply wasn't there, so in tongue in cheek, I say a lot of times, people ask me when I do presentations and say, do you feel bad about it that you failed grade 7 3 times? I said, I do. I still do even now. And I said, I should have quit earlier. So tongue in cheek, obviously, but I didn't learn nothing there. What I did do is once I got a job and then worked in a furniture factory, all of what I did from there on in, I learned in different ways, but I learned it in real life,
Exactly.
and that worked for me, and
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
has given me the abilities to be successful.
Yeah, and then that's great, and that's the thing. We just like not everybody learns the same way, right? And I understand that it's not easy for the school system to adapt to every single child, but like when you have a group of children that don't learn the same way, like we need to somehow adapt it because one my younger stepboy, it's the same. Like school is not his thing,
No.
and he's been, I can't say fully miserable, but he hasn't been happy. And
Yeah.
finally, he's at the age of 17 where he can get out of school and do some like hands on learning. And you can
Exactly.
see this boy thrive, right? You can see him learning. You can see him being really happy because that's how he learns.
Yeah.
But up to that point, it was so hard for him to just get,
Yeah.
in Canada, you don't fail classes, right? You just go from one to another and so on.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been easy for him.
No.
Yeah.
So, but I've always found it amazing, and I feel that I have an obligation to speak about it, which I do frequently, and to write about it because, and not all my podcasts are relating to ADHD, but if it is appropriate in the setting,
Yeah.
I usually bring it up because it's something that I believe in, and so many other people do as well. So, and that is a good thing,
It is.
so,
Definitely is.
so as you go forward, you obviously have been very active on the media and on the platforms, and they have been successful for you. If I look at what I already know about you, is that there is no limitation to boundaries from being in Toronto. The whole world is
Yeah.
available to you. Fortunately for us, you and me, is that our working language, although I can speak Dutch and some German as well, that, but most people in Western Europe, which is part of our market, speak English, and many,
Yeah.
many others do. In other
Yeah.
countries, we have interviewed people from China, from Japan, from South America, and all over. And so it certainly is an international language, and
It is.
and it will just get bigger and bigger.
Yeah. 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 It's the Latin or French of the modern world, right? It used to be Latin, then at some point it was French, and now it's English. Like,
Yeah,
and coming from Poland, when you're, I guess, born in a country that only or mostly just people in that country speak a language, it really pushes you to learn other languages. And I'm very grateful I had that opportunity. I started with French actually because of my godmother who immigrated to France, so I started learning French first. But
right.
um, with English, because then, as you say, we have that advantage of communicating with majority of people because people know it.
It served you well because French is another very important language, and especially
Yes.
not only in Canada but also in Europe. And then the other one is, do you find, just out of curiosity, you get any clients out of Poland?
No, not currently, no. But I also don't market in that
Right.
market. I focus my marketing to North America, and then occasionally somebody from Europe finds me. So no, currently. And you know what? It would be, I think, in the beginning, it would be challenging because, of course, I'm fluent in Polish, but I haven't used Polish in the professional manner for 20 years.
But it's
So
just like riding bike, right?
yeah,
Like I
I would
had
have to
to
like.
today. I went to the gym, and I seldom speak Dutch, other than even to my family. They usually
Uh-huh.
speak English because they like to speak English. In Holland, if you go to Holland, people love to speak English. And if I try to speak Dutch, they say speak English because I like to speak English. So I had a fella came up to me, and my last name is Brink, Brink, and
Mhm.
he said to me, "Are you Dutch from birth?" I said, "I am." And he said, "Can you speak still Dutch?" I said, "Yeah, I can, although I grew up speaking dialect, different from High Dutch. It's my favorite dialect." And, so I spoke to him a little bit of Dutch. He was all excited because he was looking for somebody, that could speak Dutch. And, it's always interesting to get those kind of encounters.
Yes, yes, yes. And my Polish, like I'm can communicate fluently, but there are words that I forget, right? There are words that I need a little bit of moment when they're not your general kind of conversation words, because I don't use them. But yeah, it's like riding a bike. Once you know it at a certain level, you will never
It will
forget
come
it.
back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Maggie, anything else comes to mind in your mind that we should be covering?
I don't know. That's a tough question. I think. No, I think we covered. Unless you have any questions or anything, but I would, if I can, I would ask you a question.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay, okay. So if you could give any advice to, let's say, a starting entrepreneur, brand new entrepreneur, whether they're just starting and they want to be entrepreneur from the beginning, or maybe they're like me, they burnt out in the corporate world and they're like, I need a change and I need something else, what would you tell them?
First, make sure that you have confidence in what you want to do. Then try to find out which area you're involved in that you would like to pursue. If it is being a consultant or being working in, or say, I want to go into become a builder. Work for a builder so you understand it. A lot of those individuals don't mind talking to a person that wants aspires to become an entrepreneur. Like even for me, I've been in business virtually for 60 years, and so every so often I get people talking to me and saying, "Can I talk to you about entrepreneurship? And I'm thinking about going this direction or that direction." And I usually say, "Yes, I do." That's why I wrote the book, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. Is saying that the more you know about the direction you want to go in, and then if you want to become an entrepreneur, make sure that you understand. A lot of times the information is available about that particular craft or businesses to see where the challenges are. Become informed. And then hire people. If you don't know much about business, hire people like yourself that specialize in giving business advice in terms of how do I put together a business plan, or how can I interact with a financial institution to put forward, my credentials and the ability to pursue a particular type of business. So I've done my homework, and always make sure that you understand what you want to do, but it will look like, make a plan, involve good advice, so that you understand the financial side of entrepreneurship. If you want to become a consultant, then be informed. Know create confidence so that you know what you're going to be consulting about or giving advice. In some cases, partnerships may work, although those again are delicate in in the area of the finances required. But I think even this morning I gave a presentation to a college, a group of people, about entrepreneurship, and say, what do I do if I want to pursue I want to become an entrepreneur, work for myself. I said, find a direction first, become good at it, like what I did. I always knew I wanted to go to Canada, and I wanted to have a sawmill. So I made sure that wherever I had the information, and I got to know how to manage companies in North America, in particular in Canada, and then my skill sets in the lumber industry, the more information I could find, I found, and then I started working in a company like that. And then
Mhm.
within a year and a half, I was a superintendent, and within
Mhm.
2.5 years, I had an option I managed the company, and after managing it for 5 years, I would get a share of it.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
was all based on the fact that I knew and had acquired the skill to do the business. The other part that was attractive to them is I'm always positive most of the times. I always give it
Mhm.
150% passion, and I work hard. And
Yes.
and that is a skill set. Sounds simple, but if that is who you are and that's what you
Mhm.
practice, that's very, very beneficial.
That's awesome. Thank you. And 100% agree with everything you said.
Maggie, it was a pleasure to have you on my podcast. As I said, it is live, but also it will
Yeah.
be posted tomorrow. And it was a privilege to have you. For those people watching us, and we like you to subscribe to our podcast, to share it with others, to like it, and to ask for questions, and also watch your website and your podcast. And it is interesting to have discussions like this
Mhm.
about different areas of interest to a lot of people around the world. So I really, really enjoyed it, and let's make sure we stay in touch.
Yeah. Thank you so much, John, for having me. It's a privilege to me, and I'm glad we got to talk and I got to meet you. And hopefully, our conversation will provide value to those who listen. And I definitely want to stay in touch. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Maggie. You take
Thanks.
care.
You too.